The Academy called it the Trial of Fear. A machine older than some empires, flawless in its judgment, designed to map the terror coiled in every living mind. No cadet graduated without facing it. One by one, they stepped forward. A scaled warrior trembled as the screen bloomed with images of firestorms consuming her nest. A tusked predator roared in defiance, but the machine showed his dread anyway, the dishonor of being chained. Laughter, whispers, mockery rippled through the hall as each chart appeared. The system never lied, and humiliation was part of the lesson. In the back row, the human waited. Soft-skinned, weaponless, fragile, the one species everyone expected to crumble the fastest. Some cadets had already begun to grin, waiting to see what pathetic nightmare the machine would dig out of him. He rose without a word and sat in the chair. Electrodes hummed against his skin. The machine stirred, lights chasing across its surface as it dove into his mind. And then it faltered. Data spiked, collapsed, rebooted. The screen hissed with static. Medics barked orders, technicians scrambled to check the wiring. The human only sat still, calm eyes fixed ahead. Finally, the chaos ended. The projector froze, and across the wall in burning letters appeared a single word. Unknown. The room, which had moments before been vibrating with laughter and mocking tension, fell into a vacuum of silence. The air felt too thick. Even the insectoid instructor, who had spent the last half-cycle boasting the machine's reliability, stared as if his optical cluster might be malfunctioning. "Run it again," someone barked. A technician sprinted toward the console, fingers working feverishly over luminescent glyphs. They reattached the sensors, recalibrated resonance filters, purged memory caches. Vitals are stable, neural interface is clean, no feedback loops. The machine is functional, one of the engineers muttered. It's just refusing to classify. They ran the test again, then again. Each time, the same cascade: spike, crash, reboot, freeze, unknown. The human, still seated, looked neither confused nor smug. Just there, present, waiting. His name tag read, Eric Malone. No rank embellishment, no cultural flair. Just a name. Around him, cadets shifted uneasily. The Luxorians, built like tower-limbed arachnids, stepped back with their usual clicking grace. The Ruark twins, all muscle and tusks, now sat quietly instead of exchanging bets. Even Kairesh, whose species claimed no concept of fear at all, tilted her crown of tendrils in visible confusion. It wasn't just that the machine couldn't read the human. That might have been a fault, a calibration issue. No, the machine had read something, then rejected it. Repeatedly. The implication was worse than error. It was deliberate omission. "Medical," called the lead instructor, his throat sac pulsing anxiously. "Check his neural response. Look for artificial blockers, dampeners, anything." A medical team surrounded Eric, attaching fresh bioscans. They ran EEGs, cardiac monitors, reflex tests. One of the assistants took a full blood sample. Not just a prick, but a full vial from the median cubital vein. He flinched slightly at the needle, no more than anyone would. His blood pressure was a little high, heart rate slightly elevated, unsurprising under pressure, but there were no signs of pharmacological interference. He's not suppressing anything. This is a standard human stress pattern. Elevated cortisol, normal range, no foreign agents in the bloodstream. The chief medic stepped back. He's clean. Instructor Calex leaned closer, his breath fogging faintly against the chill recirculators. "Cadet Malone, did you experience anything during the scan?" Eric looked up at him. "It didn't show me anything. Maybe your machine's broken." A low ripple passed through the cadets again, this time not laughter, but something tighter. Fear with a new face, uncertainty. The next cadet was called. A Silent from a water world. He hesitated at the chair, eyeing it like it might bite. His readout showed a dark abyss being pulled from the ocean, suffocating in open air. It passed. The class exhaled. But no one really paid attention after that. Even when one cadet's fear was displayed as the annihilation of his family's bloodline in front of his ancestral crypt, the tension didn't fully return because the room kept stealing glances back at the human. The one whose mind couldn't be read, the one who hadn't blinked. Later that day, while other cadets nursed their embarrassment or basked in the relief of having passed the trial, Eric walked alone through the outdoor training yard. No one approached him. Not even Karesh, who normally sparred with every species at least once to test herself. She passed him with a slight bow of her head and did not make eye contact. He sat by himself on a bench near the kinetic field, watched the solar filter dim as evening approached. One of the medics, a Centauri assistant, approached cautiously, holding a tablet. "I ran a full diagnostic on the machine's logs," she said, awkwardly folding her forearms. "You know what's strange? It didn't crash. It completed its cycle and recorded the result." Eric looked at her, genuinely interested now. "And?" She hesitated. "It flagged your neural response as non-classifiable, not error, not data corrupted. It used the internal code for legacy encounters." "Legacy?" She nodded. "Ancient contacts, the kinds we haven't seen since before the Archive Wars. Beings whose fear patterns broke the framework. The only recorded classification that fits Island. Unquantifiable." Eric frowned. "So, what does that mean?" The medic stared at him. "It means you might be the most terrifying thing in this academy." By the next cycle, word had spread. In the dining bay, the whisper followed every tray. The human cadet. The trial of fear. The verdict. Unknown. A term spoken in hushed tones, as if saying it aloud might attract its meaning. Instructors tried to downplay it. Official bulletins labeled it under review. But no one missed the tension in the hallways, or the sudden way instructors paused when Eric entered a room. Even the training AI now asked him for manual override, more often than not, as if uncertain what his biometric tags meant. And yet, Eric kept showing up. To tactics class, field training, zero-grav maneuver drills. He laughed at jokes, laughed at himself, argued over protein rations and handed out chewing gum during breaks. But nothing he did, no smile, no casual shrug ever quite reached the walls others now built around him. In the fear chamber, the machine sat untouched for 3 days. Then, without ceremony, it was brought online again. "This is not a retest," Instructor Calix said, addressing a new class of observers. "This is a diagnostic verification. The system must prove it was not compromised." Eric stood nearby, arms folded, saying nothing. No one had ordered him to participate again. He just showed up when he heard. A cadet from the Jura stepped up. Her body was armored in crystal chitin, her blood said to carry trace minerals from supernovae. She was proud, undefeated in sparring matches, and known to laugh in simulations of battlefield collapse. She sat. The machine hummed. Her chart painted the projection wall in stunning color. It showed a black void, not empty space, but a complete loss of connection, a death not of body, but of mind. A void where the Jura hive mind no longer reached her. Alone, in a universe where she could not feel the song of her kind. She collapsed, weeping the moment it ended. Calix gave no comfort. That was not the machine's purpose. Another cadet stepped forward, and another. One by one, the system displayed their most private, paralyzing nightmares. Each exposure was like a psychic wound turned public. Eric watched them all, silent, still. After the last cadet's vision ended, a cascade of withering vines choking out his life forest, Calix turned toward him. "You remain an anomaly, Cadet Malone." Eric raised an eyebrow. "Still no readout?" "No change," the instructor said. "Would you submit again?" There was no law that said he had to. He'd already passed the trial, however anomalously. But in a moment that stretched just a little too long, Eric nodded. "I'm not afraid of machines," he said, and sat back in the chair. No one exhaled. Electrodes connected, the lights dimmed. This time, the hum began sharply. The machine reacted even faster than before, reading, parsing, decoding. Then came the stutter. A flicker, a pulse, a sound like grinding metal beneath glass. Data spilled upward in jagged spikes on the monitor, impossible amplitudes, nonsensical ratios. Heat levels in the machine core spiked. Cables began to shimmer red. A safety alarm chirped softly, then louder. Then, a bright hiss of static. And again, unknown. Only this time, the screen didn't freeze immediately. It began to show something. A shape, a shadow, almost. Abstract and massive. Not a beast, not a storm, not a memory. Something like absence given form. Then it crashed. The wall projection blinked out. The diagnostic console popped, sparks arcing briefly across its casing. Techs swarmed. Medics checked vitals, but not Eric's this time. The machine's internal regulator had overheated. A pump unit was failing. Several fuses would need manual replacement. Eric sat perfectly still in the chair, staring ahead. "Eric," Calix said carefully, "did you see anything?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I think your machine doesn't like what I think about." "You were shown an image," Calix said, briefly. "What was it?" Eric stood slowly. "I didn't see anything new. It's like it tried to pull something from me, then gave up." "Do you remember the shape?" "No," he said. "It's like trying to remember a noise that made you uncomfortable, but you don't know why." "Then, how do you know it gave up?" Eric turned, looked at Calix, then the other instructors. "Because whatever it was trying to find," he said, "I already learned how to live with it." Later, they tried to explain it away. They said the machine reacted poorly to human brain patterns, that it needed a different baseline. They proposed rewriting parts of the scanning software to use primate neurology maps, like they had for the early sapiens of Oxra 5. But that didn't explain the projected shape. Or why the internal logs showed it wasn't a software error. The Academy's head of psychometric diagnostics, a gray-shelled Tavalik, ran a full neural trace of Eric that evening. They used non-invasive mapping, real-time neuroimaging, combined with a cold light EEG shell. Eric didn't resist. He was cooperative, even curious. After 4 hours, the Tavalik returned the results. Eric's brain structure was well within human range, active, responsive, even highly adaptable. But there was one section deep within the limbic system that lit up with unusual consistency under stress mapping. "It's not abnormal," she told the assembled faculty, "but it's efficient." "What does that mean?" asked Calix. The Tavalik hesitated. "It means he's felt fear before, likely profound fear. But the brain adapted to carry it without triggering collapse. In humans, the amygdala sometimes rewires how fear integrates with reasoning. It doesn't shut it down, it reassigns it. To what purpose? Survival. It keeps moving, even if it's terrified." They reviewed the data again. The diagnostic signature wasn't blank, it was layered, a maze. Every path started as fear, abandonment, mortality, guilt, pain. But instead of paralyzing him, each emotion had been rerouted, processed, redirected into calculated action. The machine hadn't failed. It had simply found no single dominant terror, no image strong enough to isolate. Because for Eric, fear was not a wall. It was part of the floor beneath him. The instructors debated whether to inform command. In the end, they agreed on silence. But the cadets weren't bound by protocol. By the end of that week, none dared to sit at his table. By the end of the next, some left offerings on his bunk, little tokens of wary respect. And by the third week, someone carved a single word onto the door of the simulation deck. Unknown. It was no longer a classification. It was a warning. The Academy stopped calling it a trial. Internally, instructors still referred to it as the neural fear diagnostic, but cadets whispered a different name now: the wall. Because when Eric Malone sat in that chair, the machine hit something it had never encountered, a surface it could not pass through, could not classify, could not break. And no one knew what lay on the other side. Classes continued. Instructors pushed harder, drills extended longer, and the cadets sweated through every circuit. But training felt different now, more brittle. Even predator-born species, those evolved from hunters, began practicing subtle avoidance patterns around Eric. Not overt, not dramatic, just enough that in combat formations, he always had space. When bunk schedules were shuffled, no one volunteered to room with him, yet somehow no one dared complain either. Kairesh, the tendril-crowned fighter who had once prided herself on dismissing fear as a biological error, declined sparring with him. "He leaks silence," she told her cohort. "Even when he moves, it doesn't ripple." Rumors rippled instead. Some cadets said the human had no fear because his kind had killed it long ago, domesticated it like a beast, and taught it to obey. Others whispered that humanity's fear existed, but was shaped by something so vast, so alien, that even a machine built to read across time and culture could not name it. But the worst rumor, the one whispered behind closed doors, with antennae lowered and eyes darting, was that UNKNON was not a lack of fear. It was a warning from the machine itself. Legacy contact code, one cadet murmured during a nocturnal training rotation. It's used for threats that don't fit into civilization's framework. The last time that tag appeared. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Everyone had seen the history modules, the Vanishers of Genthar, the anomaly on Relay Moon 4. Events where scanners failed, data collapsed, and something unknown burned across the stars until nothing was left. And now, a human shared their classification. Eric didn't respond to the rumors. He trained harder than most, showed up earlier, stayed longer. He was the only cadet who voluntarily signed up for thermal exposure rotation and chemical hazard conditioning in the same cycle. When a flying drill shard tore a deep gash through his shoulder during an exercise, he didn't walk it off. He hit the ground hard, teeth gritted, blood already saturating his uniform. The medics arrived in seconds. They performed a full assessment in the field. The cut had torn through the anterior deltoid and scraped the clavicle. Deep laceration, risk of infection, high trauma to soft tissue. Eric didn't try to stand. He didn't joke. He did exactly what he was told, breathing through the pain. The medic cleaned the wound with iodine substitute, used hemostatic foam to slow the bleeding, and immobilized the arm before transporting him to recovery. He was out of physical drills for 12 days. During those 12 days, the academy held breath. Because weakness would have made him familiar again, understandable, mortal. Instead, the human used the downtime to attend every theory class, analyze every war simulation, and recite verbatim the entire battle doctrine of the Galvathian campaign without notes. On day 13, his sling came off. He returned to the track and completed the 4.3 Kelvin's obstacle run without pause, left arm still aching, favoring the motion slightly but finishing anyway. The instructors took notice, especially Instructor Mark, an old veteran of the Sothar insurgency, who had once fought in 0G with one lung collapsed and a dislocated hip. He was not prone to praise. But during tactical review, when cadets were asked who best embodied adaptive combat resilience, Mark tapped the screen. "Malone," he said flatly. "He never wins by force, but he always gets up." It wasn't a compliment, it was a warning. Later that week, the head administrator of the academy, the four-eyed Varellin, known as Overseer Tatch, held a closed-door meeting. It included the machine's engineers, the senior medics, the psychometric lead, and 3 representatives from Central Command. Records of that meeting were encrypted and sealed. But 2 things leaked from it. The first, a single internal memo circulated only among instructors. It read, "Continue observation of Cadet Malone. Do not provoke, do not engage in psychological escalation. Classification remains unknown." The second, someone quietly decommissioned the Trial of Fear machine. It was placed into indefinite recalibration. No replacement was scheduled. No cadet ever sat in that chair again. Weeks passed. A strange peace returned, but it was a peace laced with caution. Eric still joked, still traded rations, still helped a winged cadet from the Slaven climb the tower after a flight injury grounded him mid-drill. He still lost sparring matches, still missed questions, still grumbled when the protein bars tasted like chalk. But everyone watched for the cracks, and found none. The Ruark twins tried to bait him once. One bumped his shoulder in the mess line, muttered something about, "Machines don't show what doesn't exist." The other added, "Maybe your species just doesn't get fear, or anything at all." Eric turned, met their eyes, and smiled. Not wide, not threatening, just enough. Then he walked away. That night, both twins filed voluntary reassignments to different sleep blocks. Karesh said it best, during a seminar on pre-combat psychology. "The rest of us know what we fear. We saw it, faced it. We are stronger now because we know the shape of our limits." She gestured toward Eric, who sat in the back, quiet. "But he walks without that shape. That's not strength. That's not weakness. That's a door without a lock." One of the instructors asked what she meant. She stared at them. Would you sleep easy next to a door that never tells you what's behind it? The summons came without a reason. No citation, no disciplinary tag. Just an official call code ping on Eric Malone's comms tablet, blinking amber. Report to Evaluation Bay Theta. 19th cycle. Internal clearance required. He showed up 10 minutes early. Evaluation Bay Theta wasn't part of the main campus. It lived beneath it 3 levels down, past the regular dormitories, under the secure tech archives. Cadets weren't sent there often. Most didn't even know it existed. Those who did called it the glass room. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a chamber colder than it needed to be. Transparent walls, sterile lighting, and a table that looked more like it belonged in a medical exam suite than a classroom. 3 figures waited inside. Commander Nils Human, gray-bearded, uniform immaculate, a rare sight at the academy, where instructors from Earth were posted sparingly. Inquisitor Tail, a Corellan whose skin flickered in subtle pulses of biolight. Their species had no visible mouth, but spoke with impeccable Terran standard through an implanted synthesizer. And lastly, Overseer Tatch himself. Cadet Malone, said Nils, gesturing to the chair opposite them. Please sit. Eric did, not casually, just quietly, alert. Tail placed a data cube onto the table. It illuminated automatically. Images scrolled across its surface scans of Eric's trial, logs from the machine, timestamps, core temperatures, power spikes, and finally, the word again, unknown. We are not here to reprimand you, said Tail softly. We are here to understand. Is this a formal psych eval? Eric asked. No, said Tatch, his 4 eyes blinking independently. This island, clarification. We've reviewed the machine logs, Nils said. They show that your neurological responses weren't abnormal. In fact, your mental resilience during the scan registered at 73% above baseline. Eric said nothing. However, Tail continued, there was a pattern in your limbic response that resembles a historical tag, one we haven't seen in generations. The Corellan leaned forward slightly. Do you know what that tag is? I read the label, Eric said. Legacy contact. Unknown. Not very helpful. It's more than that, Nils said. It's a classification reserved for species whose internal processing of threat does not result in observable fear. Maybe your machine just missed it. No, said Tatch, steepling his fingers. It refused it. A silence stretched. Eric tilted his head. So, what are you asking me? Nils tapped the cube, freezing a frame mid-recording. It showed the shadow the same flicker of impossible geometry the machine had attempted to project before crashing. Did you see this? Eric looked at the image. And for the first time, something subtle changed in his expression. Not fear, but memory. I didn't see it then, he said, but I've seen something like it, years ago. Tail leaned closer. Where? Eric didn't answer right away. Then, Station Helix 7, outer orbit. During my civvy years, before enlistment. Hull breach in Sector 9. The crew locked down the corridor, thought everyone was clear. He paused. I wasn't. Tatch opened a notepad, began to type. You were in a decompression zone? Yeah. How long? 11 minutes. Even Tail blinked. With no suit? There was partial atmosphere in the alcove, emergency gel mask, but the rest of the corridor vacuum. You should have gone into cardiac arrest within 3. I didn't. Explain, said Nils. Eric's hand tightened slightly on the edge of the chair. I thought I was dead. I accepted it. And then, I didn't die. I stayed awake. I felt everything. The panic hit so hard I thought my brain would fry itself. What did you do? I counted, he said, backwards from 5,000. I figured if I got to 0, I'd either be dead or rescued. And? Asked Tail. I got to 94, he said. Then the rescue drone breached the secondary airlock. None of the officials spoke for a moment. Neurological records from that event are sealed, said Nils. Why? Eric looked at him. Because I told the medics I didn't remember anything. They didn't ask questions. I didn't offer details. And what do you remember now? Eric shrugged. I remember being more afraid than I'd ever been in my life, and I remember surviving it, and after that, fear didn't feel like an enemy anymore. Nils sat back. You mastered it. No, Eric said, eyes narrowing. I made space for it. Big difference. Tail looked down at the image. Then the machine didn't fail. It found something it didn't know how to show. It showed me, Eric said quietly. It just didn't know what to do with it. Overseer Tatch exchanged a long look with Nils. Then he stood. That will be all, Cadet. Eric nodded once and left. After the door sealed, the three remained silent for some time. Should we report this to Central Command? Tail asked at last. No, Nils said. They'll only want to contain him. We don't know if he's dangerous. Everything is dangerous, Tatch said, when it refuses to be understood. That night, Eric returned to his quarters, found a note on his bunk not official, handwritten, unusual for the Academy. It read, We don't know what you are, but you make the machine scared, and I think that's enough. No signature. He tucked it away. He didn't smile. The first real emergency came exactly 31 cycles after the trial of fear. It began as a simple systems anomaly, a power fluctuation in the orbital stabilizers above the Academy. Routine, easily correctable. Then came the secondary breach alert. Then the loss of telemetry from satellite Nexus 3. Then the blackout. By the time Command declared a full-scale threat protocol, half the orbital grid had gone silent. The Academy's shield generators strained under the sudden voltage drop. Emergency lights flickered in every corridor. Gravity distorted for a moment, an eerie weightlessness that sent cadets scrambling to secure gear. Steady bulkheads, reassert footing. Then, the first impact hit. A soundless shudder ran through the foundations. Not a quake, not an atmospheric strike. An external kinetic event. Status! Roared Calyx, gripping a stanchion as the control deck trembled again. What just hit us? Incoming object, no transponder, no registry, size comparable to an assault-class dropship. Not from our fleets, snapped the technician. Hostile? It isn't broadcasting anything, just descending, fast. Within moments, the Academy shifted into full lockdown. Cadets were sorted, some evacuated to subterranean safe zones. Others dispatched to defensive posts. Instructors took command of mobile response units. And Eric? He was in the east hangar when the sirens peaked. The lights were red, the floor shook, metal screamed as something pierced the outer atmospheric barrier. Instructors barked orders, rushing to mobilize the perimeter. Cadets were told to hold formation, not to engage. But Eric didn't wait. He pulled on a partial exoframe standard issue, unarmed, and sprinted toward the breach site without being told. When he reached it, the entry point was still smoking. The wall had ruptured inward, mangled steel splayed like flower petals in a storm. Debris was scattered across the floor. Sparks danced along torn conduit lines. At the center of the breach, something moved. A machine, not Academy-built, not even recognizable. It stood nearly 4 meters tall, bipedal but wrong. Its limbs reconfigured themselves every few seconds, fluid mechanics that made no physical sense. It emitted no signal, no heat, no data. But wherever it stepped, walls began to corrode. Metal rotted to powder under its feet. The first instructor on scene, a Slinari named Brenna, raised her weapon. Identify yourself. This is a secure facility. The machine looked at her. And she collapsed. Instantly. No sound, no mark. Just dropped like a marionette, with its strings cut. That was when the other cadets began to panic. Orders failed, fire teams scrambled, but the machine, if it could be called that, didn't attack. It approached. Slow, unhurried, as if testing something. Eric stepped forward. Unarmed, still limping slightly from a healed injury, face expressionless. Someone shouted at him to fall back. He didn't. The thing paused. Its surface shimmered shadows, almost. Not camouflage, not light distortion, just wrong, like it wasn't entirely here. It faced him. And for a moment, the air changed. Not colder, not hotter, but quieter. Then it lunged. Eric moved. Not faster, not better, just at the right moment. He sidestepped the swipe, ducked low, reached for a fire suppression panel, ripped the hatch from the wall, and threw it into the machine's knee joint. It staggered. Just a little. But it reacted. That was the break they needed. Cadets opened fire. Not because it would work, but because he had moved first. Eric darted to the flank, found an auxiliary panel, bypassed the lockout, rerouted cooling flow to the hangar vents, and dumped super-chilled gas across the breach site. The machine flinched again, sensitive to temperature shift. Instructors flooded in, armed with heavy weapons this time. Within minutes, the tide shifted. And then, the machine simply collapsed. Not destroyed, just ended, like its purpose was finished. A week later, the analysis team had no explanation. The device hadn't transmitted anything before, during, or after its incursion. It left no power signature, no origin trace. Its inner architecture didn't match any known technology. The official report called it an anomalous test drone, but no one believed that. Because Brennan never woke up. And because everyone saw who had acted first. Eric Malone. The one cadet who hadn't frozen, who hadn't waited for orders, who'd stood in front of something alien, unclassifiable, and uninvited and moved. Just like he had in the trial. The word came back. Unknown. Same designation, same classification. The same silence in the report margins. By the time graduation arrived, the academy had made certain adjustments. There were no more trials. The machine was quietly dismantled. Its components archived under top clearance code. No reason given. Eric received no special honors, no speech, no extra stripe. Just a file noting, extreme situational response effectiveness under anomalous conditions. He didn't need the recognition. Because everyone had seen. Even the alien cadets, who once mocked humanity's softness, now stepped aside when he passed. Not out of reverence, not out of fear, but out of respect. He was still human, still joked about the food, still favored his right arm a bit when it rained, still helped carry packs when the newer cadets staggered under weight. But they never forgot. Not the machine, not the verdict. Because the worst kind of fear isn't the one you can see. It's the kind that doesn't stop you. That walks beside you, calm, quiet, and ready. And, if there was one thing the galaxy learned from Cadet Eric Malone, it was that the most terrifying force in the universe might not be claws, fangs, or firestorms. It might be a soft-skinned mammal who had looked at death, counted backward from 5,000, and decided, not today.